Good morning, and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are delighted to have you here, both those in this space and those attending virtually. It is good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children, sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Jim Van Ostrand. I'm a member of your board of directors. I use pronouns he, him, his. Every Sunday, our ministers and staff will be running social hour from the social hall. Please join in person or via Zoom. Beginning 5 minutes after the postlude, it is a 20-minute session of sharing in randomized small groups. It is designed to provide a deep and intentional welcome to all. We've heard from many of you of how important this time has been to connect, to meet new people. If you prefer an informal time of mingling, feel free to do so in the Emerson alcove. If you are interested in membership, feel free to attend today's Membership 1 class. It will take place in the alcove at 1 p.m. Contact Reverend Jack for details. And there is still room in the estate planning workshop that will take place virtually this afternoon at 3 p.m. This workshop is sponsored by the WBUUC Endowment Committee. To get the link for the workshop, please email Russell Rogers at russell.rogers.w@gmail.com. Or let Reverend Roger know you'd like the link when you exit today. A couple different Rogers in there. Besides myself, service participants today include Reverend Jack and Reverend Roger, with behind-the-scenes support from Aaron Scott and Anna Garris. Music today is from Stephen Wallach and the OK Factor. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come in, come into this place, which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. And our chalice will be led today, Chalice Lighting, by Reverend Jack.
I went for a nature walk yesterday with my queer fam, and we went to one of our usual spots. We have two main walking spots, and both of them happen to be on opposite sides of the Mississippi River. One of them is Pike Island, and the other is Crosby Farm. When I lift up to the 10,000-foot view of my year, I realize that visiting this place has become one of my rituals. In the course of a busy year, I come to this exact place probably about 10 times per year. It grounds me, it centers me, it reminds me of who I am and where I am. Because this exact spot is a sacred place for the indigenous people of this land, it also reminds me of who lived here before me. It is the place where the Mississippi meets the Minnesota. It is called Vidote, the convergence of the waters. We light this morning's chalice for all the places of ritual and the practices of ritual that keep us grounded and centered, connected to our histories and connected to each other.
And I invite you to join in the unison opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth of love, and to help one another. I invite you, whether you are watching virtually or in this space, to rise in body or in spirit, to, if you're at home, sing out loud. If you're here, we invite you to hum to our opening hymn, Voice Still and Small. This month's theme is ritual, the practice of centering. One of the rituals that we share together is the practice of sharing stories. It's a ritual that invites all of us, of all ages, not just into listening and learning, but into sacred imagination. This practice of sacred imagination requires us not just to think about the words we are hearing, but as an invitation to open our senses to the story so that we can more fully experience the words. As we imagine, we draw from our own memories of smells, sounds, textures, and sights. The story can come alive for us in a new way. And so before I share this morning's story, I invite you to relax where you are in your body, take a deep breath, and as you listen to the story, allow your senses to awaken. What smells, sights, sounds, textures do the words bring up in you? What experiences of ritual in your own life do the words bring up for you? What feelings do the words bring up for you? Our story today is from The Gates of the Forest, which is a novel by Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel. When the great Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov saw misfortune threatening the Jews, it was his custom to go into a certain part of the forest to meditate. There he would light the fire, say a special prayer, and the miracle would be accomplished and the misfortune averted. Years later, when a disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, the celebrated Majid Mesrit, had occasion for the same reason to intercede with heaven, he would go to the same place in the forest and he would say, "Master of the universe, listen. I do not know how to light the fire, but I am still able to say the prayer. This must be sufficient." And it was sufficient. And again, the miracle would be accomplished. Still later, another rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Leib of Sasov, in order to save his people once more, would go into the forest and say, "I do not know how to light the fire. I do not know the prayer, but I know the place, and this must be sufficient." It was sufficient, and the miracle was accomplished. The years passed, and it fell to Rabbi Israel of Ryzen to overcome misfortune. Sitting in his armchair, his head in his hands, he spoke to God, "I am unable to light the fire, and I do not know the words of the prayer, and I cannot even find the place in the forest. All I can do is tell the story, and this must be sufficient." And it was. The miracle happened.
Continuing deeper into that ritual of centering, we take time out of time to hold and honor the prayers of the people. In a moment, I'll collect the requests from the prayer bowls, both the one here in the sanctuary and our virtual prayer bowl, which can be found in the Zoom chat box. But first, I have some hard news today. Our beloved member, Elisa Cottle, passed away from cancer this past week. She was a champion of the arts and a teacher of creative writing. Her memorial service will be taking place in Stillwater on Friday. And our beloved, recently retired Cowett had a stroke 10 days ago. She's recovering in the ICU at HCMC. She's able to sit in a chair, eat, speak with Mick and her daughter Corinne. Her condition is stable and steady, and her care team is very optimistic about her recovery. It will take a while for her to regain strength and balance for walking, and she could be in the hospital for another couple of weeks. The family welcomes cards, but at this time does not want visits, calls, texts, or food. Now, let's hold these concerns and all the others. Please join me in a moment of prayer and meditation. We pause to acknowledge these deep joys and profound sorrows that we hold every week and this week, the ones we encounter along the journey through life's forest. The branches of the trees stretch high into the sky, dancing with possibility, and the roots of the trees burrow down deep into the earth, connecting with sustenance and matter. Rooted in the places where we've been, and growing toward the places where we haven't yet been. We are constantly in tension, connected both with earth and sky. We know pain and we know hope. We have joys and sorrows, and it is important to name them out loud, because what can be named can be managed. Today, our community is holding many people in love and in light. The family of Elisa Cottle. We also hold the family of Scott Peterson, a friend of Anne and Trigg, who died this morning from brain cancer. And we hold Carol Cowett and her family. And now we add the names of those people on our hearts and in our minds. From out of the stillness and into it, we name them out loud. Knowing that together we can support each other. Our roots are strong. Blessed be, and amen.
WBUUC joins dozens of faith communities to participate with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, an interfaith coalition which is building a new future of inclusive, renewable, and sustainable energy. We can be part of the work which supports so many actions, including leadership training, community support, demonstrations, resistance, education, healing, and petitions. They're also active in civil disobedience, work with elected leaders, and meaningful national and community events to support carbon reduction and responsible water management. Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light is working to support activities to influence the UN climate talks happening now through November 12th in Glasgow, Scotland. Your donation will help create cleaner, safer, and more equitable energy use in the world. As always, you can donate in 3 ways. On the WBUUC webpage, or send a check, or leave a check in the locked box outside the front office, or use the text to give option. No matter how you give, please indicate the keyword climate. Thank you for your generosity to address the climate crisis.
Our reading is from Thomas Merton. In actual fact, conventions are the death of real tradition, as they are of all real life. They are parasites which attach themselves to the living organism of tradition and devour all its reality, turning it into a hollow formality. Tradition is living and active, but convention is passive and dead. Tradition does not form us automatically. We have to work to understand it. Convention is easily accepted passively, as a matter of routine. Therefore, convention easily becomes an evasion of reality. It offers us only pretended ways of solving the problems of living, the system of gestures and formalities. Tradition really teaches us to live and shows us how to take full responsibility for our own lives. Thus, tradition is often flatly opposed to what is ordinary, to what is mere routine. But convention, which is a mere repetition of familiar routines, follows the line of least resistance. One goes through an act without trying to understand the meaning of it all, merely because everyone else does the same. Tradition, which is always old, is at the same time ever new, because it is always reviving, born again in each new generation, to be lived and applied in a new and particular way. Convention is simply the ossification of social customs. The activities of conventional people are merely excuses for not acting in a more integrally human way. Tradition nourishes the life of the spirit. Convention merely disguises its interior decay.
I love ritual. There's a part of me that kind of wishes I was a high church Episcopalian or a Hindu. Partly because the rituals in those traditions really hit all five senses. Rituals center me and they ground me. They remind me at an embodied soul level where I am, who I am, what I believe, what my deepest values are, and sometimes what I ought to do ethically. There's a sequence in the worship services here each week that centers and grounds me every time, assuming I'm paying at least a little bit of attention. And that's the moment of the call to worship words and then the chalice kindling. One part of this sequence is deeply familiar to me. The other is new. I've participated in the chalice lighting ritual thousands and thousands of times since I became a Unitarian Universalist in 1987. I have been part of chalice lightings from Nantucket Island to the Philippines to Kathmandu to Matamidi. Everywhere, the ritual is basically the same. There are some words that are spoken, sacred words that are said corporately or by an individual, and then a flame is kindled. When the chalice is lit, I am reminded that I am part of a living tradition with very deep roots. I think about our Unitarian and Universalist spiritual ancestors around the world whose legacy is this faith that I love. Their vision, their sacrifices, their ideas, their dedication shaped our faith. The chalice lighting also reminds me of those principles that we hold most dear as American Unitarian Universalists, particularly for me, belief in the inherent dignity and worth of all people, an affirmation that we're part of an interdependent web of all existence. The other half of this sequence in the service here at White Bear UU is saying or hearing the call to worship. Let me share those words again in case you weren't fully paying attention. Come in. Come into this place made holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can be touched, where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. I think maybe I heard those words or a variation once or twice before coming here. I suppose I did one time I did a pulpit exchange here. And these beautifully written words have really become powerful to me just in a few months here. They remind me that we have the power as human beings to make space holy, including right here, right now. They remind me that all of who we are called to be, should at least, and is and should be at least, welcomed in this congregation. They remind me that life in religious community is, or at least should be, thoroughly mutual. All of us give and all of us receive. They remind me that it is okay to be human. And they remind me that we place a high value on trying to live as compassionately as we possibly can. I've been struck during these couple months here about how much these words mean to many of you. When I asked folks, what do you love most about White Bear UU? Sometimes these words come out, or at least the ideas that are so beautifully expressed in them. So I assumed when I arrived a couple of months ago that Reverend Victoria Safford decided to use these words as the call to worship. And Victoria told me that, in fact, they actually predated her ministry here. I'm assuming that they go back to the ministry of Reverend Gail Seavey. I contacted this week the author of these words, Reverend Rebecca Edmiston Lang, and had a wonderful email conversation with her. So Becky retired a few months ago after serving the Emerson Unitarian Church in Houston for 22 years. I told Becky how important her words have become to me and to many in this congregation. And I shared that I think these words have probably been shared on maybe 1,300 Sundays over the years, and that they continue to pack a punch for many people here. So Becky shared on how these words really strike her as aspirational now, knowing as she looks back on her long career as a minister that we as individuals, we as a community, often fall short of our ideals. She also said that though these words describe a wholeness that often or even mostly eludes us, they still embody hopes of how we might be together in community, and the truth that sometimes we do create grace, if only for a brief time, but such experiences beckon us to keep trying. I'll also add that Becky shared with me that the words to our call to worship, which I sent to her, are actually exactly as she wrote them. So there's going to be a quiet change in the order of service starting next week. The words will no longer say adapted from Reverend Rebecca Edmiston Lane, but by Reverend Rebecca Edmiston Lane. So this call to worship, at least for many of us, continues to speak to us, it continues to center us, it continues to ground us. It does remind us of this congregation's highest ideals, and what a beautiful thing. So like Victoria, I am choosing to keep them in place. The problem with rituals, though, sometimes is that they ossify. That's the word Thomas Merton used. My dictionary defines ossify as hardened like bone, rigid, inflexible in habits, attitude, and opinion. Ossified rituals feel dead. They box us in instead of liberating us. Some rituals are beautiful and moving for a time, and then slowly they lose their impact. Sometimes the word and the symbolism gets to be so automatic that we don't even pay attention. And sometimes rituals kind of confirm, or the rituals confirm for us ideas or behaviors that really we probably should let go of, that aren't all that helpful. In the Thomas Merton reading that Jack shared, I think Merton uses a useful distinction, makes a useful distinction between tradition and convention. Rituals that continue to give life over time are traditions. In Merton's words, they are living and active. We have to work to understand what they're saying to us. They teach us how to live, and they nourish the life of the Spirit. And I would say that the call to worship here fits in that category. Rituals that become convention in Merton's sense are passive, empty, eventually dead. They become mere repetitions. They end up holding us hostage. Sometimes spiritual communities cling to ossified rituals because whenever a new idea or a new practice emerges, there is a chorus of, no, this is the way we've always done it, not that way. Congregations that have a knee-jerk, but this is always the way we've done it, response to every idea and every innovation tend to get stuck. And part of what has made this congregation, I think, so dynamic and so vibrant for its 65 years of existence is not getting stuck in, this is the way we've always done it. If you had gotten stuck, I think you most likely would still be on that little building that's now a house on Matamidi Avenue, or maybe you would have gotten stuck here with 200 or 300 members and not doing this addition, or maybe, like a lot of UU congregations started in the 1950s, this would be long gone. A lot has changed over the years. Those who have been here for 30, 40, 50 years know a lot's changed. This is the way we've always done it, thankfully, has never carried the day here. You have been skillful at figuring out what are traditions worth keeping and what are conventions worth dismissing and discarding. This is how you have kept your ritual life alive and flourishing. So for me, that story by Elie Wiesel is a metaphor for this. Even as that ritual the story centers on continues to evolve, it still has meaning. The ritual, like White Bear UU's worship service, does not have to be conducted in exactly the same way year after year, generation after generation, to be meaningful. While grief can make change and adaptation especially hard, a long-time, highly successful ministry such as you were blessed to have with Victoria for 22 years can leave in its wake a lot of, but this is the way we've always done it. The interim period after such a long ministry and into the new settled ministry to follow is a wonderful time not to get stuck. It's a good time to practice adapting and not to just keep saying, but this is the way we've always done it. The pandemic is both a gift and a curse in this. It is forcing some changes. As you can see, we can't do services in the same way that our multi-platform, that is both virtual and in person. And on the other side, having to make a bunch of other changes in the pandemic can make some of us resistant because it's just too much change. Regardless of the pandemic, though, this is a time for trying new things. It's a time for honing that skill of adaptation. And this is what will help pave the way for a next vibrant chapter at White Bear UU Church. It will enable you, together with the new minister who comes, it'll enable you to create something that is fresh, that is beautiful. So please try to stay open to change. Remember that what is at that glowing center of this congregation is not a particular ritual or way of doing the service or set of words. Victoria could have come in 22 years ago, scrapped those call to worship words in the first month, and it still would have been a really good 22-year ministry. So be careful of what you define as the essence of this church. And remember that Victoria, like Gail before her, adapted the worship service to fit her vision and also her unique skill set. It would be foolish for you to make the next minister do what Victoria was really good at, if they're not. So that requires flexibility. I'll close with a wonderful line from the Relational Covenant at the Fox Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Appleton, Wisconsin, that I served for 25 years. This line is, "We strive to respect tradition and also embrace change as the needs of the community change." May this spirit of respecting tradition and also embracing change as the needs of the community change, may this spirit be here and guide us together through these next couple years, and you and the new lead minister in the years to come after that. May it be so. Our closing hymn today is Color and Fragrance, which I think has beautiful words from Norbert Chapek, who was the creator of the Flower Communion that is a part of this congregation's wonderful, rich tradition. Color and Fragrance, that's number 78. I invite you to stand in body or in spirit and join in humming or singing.
As always, feel free to join us for our social hour in the social hall after this morning's postlude. When you arrive, you'll be assigned in a randomized small group. For now, please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.
In my email correspondence this week with Reverend Edmiston Lang, she shared with me a variation to the call to worship that is used here. And so I'm adapting the variation that she shared with me. Yes, I really am adapting it. The change is I'm making it, instead of about gathering, about going. So I have changed the word, simply substituted go out for come in. Go out. Go, dreamers and builders all. Go out to worship and rejoice. For we are all dreamers of a larger dream, builders of a world more fair. Ever embraced by the spirit of life, we are united by common purpose, sustained by common faith and knowledge, faith that the world may yet yield to freedom, justice, and love. It is our task to make it so. We are dreamers and builders all, so go out. Go, dreamers and builders all. Go, worship and rejoice. May you go in peace.